Good. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 2023 regular meeting of the Warren Town Council. First order of business, could we rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. I'd like to have a moment of silence for a former town employee, Rhonda Fortin, who passed away last week. Thank you, Councilman Kalenda.
We can sit.
Say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. In 2009, I was appointed to the zoning board and Rhonda became the clerk of the zoning relatively quick after that. And while I was there as the vice chair and the chair, she was really my right hand. And when I became the chair of the joint finance, she continued to work as my recording secretary and my clerk. And I would always thank her above and beyond because she would definitely go above and beyond. But I just wanted to let the town know and the community out there that's watching that she was really important to this community and she will definitely be missed. So I would just like to express my condolences to her family for her loss. She will be missed, but she will never be forgotten. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, we have an early start. We had a little mix up on timing for some things, but we still need the extra time. But I believe legally we cannot have any of the public hearings until 7 p.m.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, how about the ordinances? Can we do that before 7 p.m.?
Yeah,
Okay, so the first thing on the agenda is the public hearing for the budget. I'd like to move that behind 01, and hopefully it'll be 7 o'clock by then, which is the ordinance for
Short-term rental.
yeah, short-term rentals. Can we move the public hearing to? Thank you.
Second.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to the council about something that's not on the agenda? Okay, that being said, we're moving right along. We are at the proclamation. This is a proclamation for Human Rights Day. And I will read it. Whereas the United Nations was founded in 1945 in the anniversary of the day on which the UN General Assembly adopted a Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 is observed each year on December 10th. And whereas Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the UN Human Rights Commission, which was charged with drafting the declaration as well as championed UN ideals across the United States. And whereas the United Nations promotes peace and security, development, democracy, economic prosperity, global health, and human rights around the world, and is vital now more than ever. And whereas the United States has a long tradition of international leadership on human rights and has shown bipartisan commitment to advancing human rights through ratification of the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, Convention Against Torture, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, and pursuing membership on the UN Human Rights Council. And whereas a 2021 bipartisan poll revealed that more than 8 out of every 10 voters say it is important that the United States remain active its role within the UN. And whereas the United Nations has strived to promote the Stand Up for Someone's Human Rights campaign of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and whereas the town or city of Warren, Rhode Island, is committed to educating and mobilizing our local communities to build a stronger network and global citizen and leadership to create a more prosperous, safe, just, and sustainable world for all. And whereas the town of Warren should participate in all activities related to Human Rights Day. Now, therefore, I, John W. Hanley, officially proclaim December 2023 as Human Rights Day. With permission of the council, I would like permission to sign this and also just ask the clerk to reword that where it says town, city of, to insert Warren into there, please.
December 10th. Correct. You said December 20th.
Did I say, all right, December tenth,
December 10th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
December,
You said 20.
did I? All right, December tenth, 2023, that's Human Rights Day.
It's all the 20s. I think.
Yeah. Do we have a motion?
So, and
Motion
second.
and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have reappointment. This is for the tree warden. Please come on down. Good, how are you? So we're looking for a reappointment. Yeah, so how's it going? Yeah, good. Any questions from the council? That's for the council, from the council?
Motion to reappoint.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I'll
gonna
second.
say, I haven't, and this is a good thing, I haven't heard much about you, which means nobody's complaining about you, so that's a good thing. Yes, so we have a motion and a second to reappoint, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
Next, we have ratification of appointment. This is for the new interim administrative officer for the planning board. Kate?
Yep, state law requires us to have an administrative officer to serve the planning board and to certify applications and process these applications. Allison Ring has been working with the planning board already as our consultant regarding the comprehensive community plan. And she's agreed that she would be interested in taking on this interim work while we are in the search for a permanent replacement. So it's my recommendation that the council appoint Allison Ring as the interim planning board administrative officer until such time as we have a permanent person on board.
Any questions from the council?
I do have a question. Notice there's a. My mic going here? Thank you. I noticed there's a limitation of not to exceed $10,000. So that limits her participation on a weekly basis to about 5 hours, if I'm doing my math right, if we go through.
The hope is that we'll fill the position
Much sooner.
well before the expiration of the agreement.
Okay, I'm just concerned if, if she's limited and she's supposed to be working on the comprehensive plan update, which is crucially important. We want to keep that moving, even though we don't have a permanent planner. And she's also working as an administrative person for the planning board. Her time is, going to be limited on what she can put in the comprehensive plan. So it's my concern.
Yes, yeah, and I will be in close contact with her and monitoring how that process is going. And if we need to extend the dollar amount, we do have the existing salary account, so those funds are available. So, if we find that her hours are adding up, then I would and we haven't filled the position, I would expect that I will be back before this board requesting to raise that limit. Unless you'd prefer to increase it at this time.
Can I just ask a question? So this contract to act as the administrative officer for the planning board is above and beyond the work that she's already doing for us in working on the comprehensive plan, or is this all together?
It's all together.
All right, then. I mean, how late is the comprehensive plan? How far in arrear is it?
10 years, maybe?
Yeah, so should we maybe be putting a little bit more focus and money behind and getting her maybe into the building 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week to get this done in hopes? I mean, we don't have the planner salary right now, so I don't know. I would be in favor of maybe upping this or increasing the time that she's working now. And that would shorten the length of the contract if it's capped at 10 grand.
Or come back at if we're exceeding the amount. Is that?
Perhaps, if I might suggest, maybe we could put this item on the agenda next month for an update. And then we'll have a month's worth of experience and we can come back and revisit it and see where we are. And hopefully I have good news about.
Right, yeah.
But she's already been working on the comp plan.
So she's
correct?
already been working on the comp plan, yes.
But
Yeah.
That came out of a separate fund.
That did
correct?
come out of a
Yes.
separate fund,
Yeah,
yes.
this is differently. I think what we should do is, as the manager suggested, we can approve we can ratify the appointment and have it on the agenda for next month to see if we need more money to it,
Okay.
add more money. But I do have a question for the solicitor. Anthony, is this subject to the MPA or do we have to advertise this position?
It's not, I'm sorry, it's not subject to the MPA,
Okay.
and because this is a temporary interim position, you don't have to advertise it.
Question. Joe?
Everybody's worried about the 10,000. Is there any concern of the $95 an hour?
That's actually a very reasonable rate for a professional planner. Given what we pay our consultants for their planner fees, it's quite a bit lower than what we would pay if we went through one of our on-call engineering firms.
And if she's doing the work, I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Right, she has low overhead because she's a one-person consultant firm, basically.
Does she have an expectation of how many hours she needs to put in to complete this work?
She's going to dig in this week and see how much she thinks it's gonna take, basically.
And like I said, what I'm assuming is the comp plan is coming, the working on the comp plan is coming out from one fund. This is to be the administrative officer, for instance, to receive the plans, to forward them to power engineering, to act, to go to the planning board meetings and direct them. I don't think, this isn't directly linked to the comp plan because that's coming out of another budget.
Right, I'm sorry, the dollar amount is separate.
Yeah.
But the contract, this is an amendment to an existing contract for the comp plan, so it's a single contract, it's just
Right.
an amendment.
So this is
To
just
add
the added
this.
task of the administrative officer.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yes,
That's what
and I don't think I explained myself
Okay.
well.
How much work did Mr. Rulli perform on this?
On the comp plan,
Yes.
my understanding is that the comp plan, the housing element's gone to the planning board and several other elements have gone as well. But I need to review those documents and see where they are exactly in the process. Because they will still need to come for public hearing, then they have to go to the state, and then they'll come back to the town. It's quite a process.
So we're 10 years behind. Mr. Rulli was here for 6 years.
Think so? No? 4, 5, close to
5
that.
years.
Yeah,
This is usually the responsibility of the planner.
yep.
Nice going away, President.
Any other questions from the council? Can we have a motion to ratify the contract?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have interviews. Economic Development Board. We have Donald Mead. Mr. Mead was here last week. I do not see him in the audience. Perhaps he thought we were starting at 7.
Yes, right.
Okay, so let's hold that back till 7. The next is Planning Board, no applications. Tax Board of Assessment Review, no applications. Town Sergeant, 1 position. Arthur Franco.
Maybe he thinks it's 7.
He may think it's 7, so we'll hold all of these back. We only have one other one.
Can I ask a question about the town sergeant position?
Yes.
Is that required by state law that we have that?
It's a charter requirement, as it is in most communities.
Okay.
Another thing that council members may not be aware of is the town sergeant doesn't only attend meetings, he also can go do postings and I don't want to say run errands, but deliver papers to the Board of Elections for the clerk. So it's not just like come into the meeting and wear a badge. He does have other duties that could be assigned. He or she, excuse me, all right, Joe, thank you. He or she does have other duties that they can perform, so.
How long's it been since we've had one?
Well, we've always had one.
We've always
Now
had
just recently retired.
6 months? Okay.
Yeah.
But they,
Mr. Hutchinson was out.
Right, right.
but they don't attend these meetings.
Yes, they usually have. In the
Never
past,
seen.
they have.
Yeah, they can.
Not in the recent future, no, but in the past, they used to attend all the time. Mr. Jarvis used to be here every meeting.
Sometimes.
Our solicitor wants to weigh in.
Anthony?
There are other duties. One of the main ones for the town sergeant was to post notices of the warning of financial town meetings, which is not something that you have here in the town anymore. So there are some statutory duties that town sergeants have that were more important in an earlier part of the history of communities in Nevada.
Okay.
Okay, so next, let's move along to the acceptance of the minutes. First, we
I think he
have,
sent me a text saying he was told 7.
yeah, that's fine. Yep. First, we have the Tuesday the 13th, the Warren Town Council meeting. I believe that's the only one we have this time. Wow.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to accept the meetings of the 13th of December. All in favor?
aye.
Okay, next we have up is the ordinance. This is for buildings and building regulations. And last month, we referred this to the Economic Development Board for some input. And we have Derek here who has prepared a nice little short, quick PowerPoint for us.
Are we skipping consent? Or is that the part that has to go?
Actually, hold on one second. I skipped the consent agenda by accident.
I just said.
Oh. Anybody want to pull anything out of the consent agenda? There's only there's only one item in there, so. And this is for a commercial waste permit.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Okay, now you can come up. Sorry.
How you doing?
Oh, my goodness.
Floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, members of the town council, members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I took over as chair, or I was elected chair of the Economic Development Board last year, and I've been learning on the job as best to help our council and our town be better economically. So one of the things that we researched we had a long discussion about at our last Economic Development Board meeting was short-term rentals. So on the first page, I think this basically serves as background, and this might be elementary to those with more experience, but just an idea of what short-term rentals are, how they affect our community in positive and negative ways, and then some recommendations that our board concluded at our last meeting. So Warren is attracted to short-term rentals because we have so much going on with us. Water Street, Main Street, downtown area, we're a tourist destination. We have recreation, arts and culture. We have great food, restaurants, and all of that. And on the flip side, short-term rentals are attractive to Warren because we don't have any hotels or motels in Warren. And in the traditional sense, there's no Ramada Inns, no Hiltons, or any of that nature. And we would have to bulldoze probably half of downtown if we wanted to get one, which is not going to fly. So one of the things that makes short-term rentals so attractive is that they're based out of the existing housing stock. So they fit in the character and consistency of the community without causing any negative impacts or as minimum impacts as possible to the surrounding community. So, I mean, that's just how this industry is going. Lodging is headed towards this sort of very small unit, maybe one per town type of deal where a homeowner, a property owner can rent out a short-term rental for an entire year on a short-term basis and make a nice profit. That helps our community by bringing in transient visitors who will spend money here, shop, and contribute to our economy. So if we look at some of the economic benefits, this is all speculative. Unfortunately, Airbnb doesn't release the data about their posts, about how many customers they have, about how many times they rented out to the public. So we couldn't know as the Economic Development Board how much money is actually coming into Warren right now. Town manager informed me that last year we had $150 in hotel tax, which is a drop in the bucket to be extreme. But we expect that with the changes in the law that are coming and have come from the state, that we're going to see some more revenue coming our way from that. So what all other effects it has on the town is that someone who stays maybe one day, comes and stays for a weekend, and they shop at more restaurants, or they eat at more restaurants and shop at more businesses, and contribute more money into our economy, which creates greater tax revenue for the town and benefits both sides, so to speak. There are some risks, as has been discussed at the last meeting. Top among them, we have danger to the people that live in multi-unit housing, where only one floor perhaps is short-term rental. knowing who they're living up, above or below or in partnership with. And we had a really terrible occurrence last year in Providence where this bachelorette party was renting out this, Airbnb in Providence, and there was a shared, entrance with a downstairs apartment with a tenant they had no idea existed. And if that person had been of more criminal variety, might have come upstairs and robbed them or done something even far worse. So it's important to have an ordinance in place that controls for issues such as health and safety in order to prevent our town from getting sort of a bad reputation from a single incident, even though we don't think one might occur. Then we looked at the impact on housing stock. So for every unit of long-term rental that is converted into short-term rental, we're losing housing. And we're already in an affordable housing crisis, and we're already seeing the impacts of rising rents and additional costs that are hurting our local residents. And certainly, we don't want the short-term rental industry to balloon, such as it has in areas like Newport, where entire streets are dedicated solely to short-term housing that can negatively impact the character of a neighborhood, as well as pushing out people who are long-term residents who want to stay there. Those are people who work in the community, those are people who contribute tax revenue to the community, and that's what we want to not see happen. And the last thing we talked about was the potential for, with vacationers partying it up, having interactions, negative interactions with members of the community in terms of noise complaints and parking enforcement and trash disposal that can involve additional calls to public safety for issues surrounding those types of things. So all in all, it's a balancing act, as I'm sure you guys know. It's the positives of the short-term rentals combined with the consequences and the costs that are associated with them. So we looked at where other communities stood. So not every community has adopted a short-term rental ordinance, and we certainly don't have to. Of those that have, Newport's ordinance prohibits short-term rentals in certain residential neighborhoods. So they call it restricted residential zones. So they use their zoning codes to say, okay, you can only have non-owner occupied short-term rentals in this part of town, but in every other part of town, it has to be owner occupied. And then they charge a $100 registration. In other communities, some require, some of these issues were touched upon at the last council meeting, so I wanted to bring them up. So Johnston, Westerly, East Providence require registration, but don't put limits on the occupancy or mandate off-street parking. However, other areas, such as Barrington, Jamestown, and Portsmouth, do have an occupancy limit of 2 guests per bedroom, and Barrington, Middletown require 1 off-street parking space per bedroom as a general standard. So with all that said, that was what our discussion got to, and we came up with some, what I think are some helpful recommendations for the council. So we think in total that Warren should adopt a short-term rental ordinance, that this ordinance should define owner occupied as the owner's residence for at least 260 days a year. That's about 9 months. So if you're a snowbird who decides to go to Florida for 4 months or so, you wouldn't be unfairly penalized for that as an owner occupied place. We thought that it was appropriate to say two occupants per bedroom with 1 off-street parking unit per bedroom. This was discussed last meeting. We thought it would appropriate, we aren't Newport, so the prices that we want to charge, the fees, I should say, for application should be more modest than what Newport was. So we said $50 for an owner occupied location and $100 for a non-owner occupied location. And then a renewal fee every year that is also based on owner occupied status. We also thought that it was appropriate to have certain restricted residential zones where we would say that that non-owner occupied short-term rentals are ineligible. So they couldn't go into, let's say, an area like Twisted and just simply buy a place and turn that into an outside Rhode Island investment group buys it as not looking to get some extra cash for a local person who's trying to rent out their place, but as an investment to sort of profit from the community. So lastly, we thought that all short-term rental properties should be subject to regular health and safety inspections, including smoke alarms and fire and carbon monoxide detectors. that, in terms of health, short-term rentals should, be required to provide soap, clean towels and linens, sanitize all dishes and, cooking utensils, and dispose of all food and beverage between guests. And then lastly, that short-term rentals should be subject to Rhode Island's Fair Housing Practices Act as a standard. So that's where we stood, and I'm happy to take any questions that the council may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
I don't know if it's more questions or just comments. I don't know if it would be fair for us to berate him with questions. Because he's just giving us his recommendations,
Right.
right? You know, but I think we should discuss what he's brought forward. But I don't think it's fair that we bombard you because I have some very strong opinions about what you presented and some things I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't even consider discussing that. But thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
I read it before I got it. Excellent.
Okay,
Well done.
A lot of good information there.
However,
Did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's,
VRBO and Airbnb, the other states that do, you just go to those states like New Hampshire, for instance, has their New Hampshire Department of Revenue, and you can get all that information that you're looking for. Rhode Island just doesn't have it up and running yet. But like other states, New Hampshire being one, Florida, that you can get all that information, like how occupied somebody's unit is just based on the tax they're paying.
Gotcha.
But great job.
thank you. There's some good recommendations here, for sure. Something to consider
Yeah.
as we move into this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and next, we did get some information from the manager. Kate, do you want to just do a quick rundown on that?
Sure. I believe Sandy downstairs making some copies for you, because some of the back that I emailed, I don't think you have copies in front of you. But she'll bring that up in just a second. The first piece of backup that I provided was based on the council's request last meeting about inquiring about the number of dwelling units that are within the town of Warren. So I did pull that off of the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning website. The number as of 2020 that they have in their database is 5,495. And that's an increase. 2010, the number is 5,149, just for your information. So you also have a copy of the draft amended ordinance based on what the council discussed at the last meeting, as I understood it, with the red lines changes that were discussed. There's still a few outstanding questions that I have. One of the questions was about, I know there was discussion about penalties. There's an existing section on enforcement and penalties. So, perhaps the council would like to look at that and see if there's any further information that needs to be added to that section. And then the outstanding questions that I think the way it was left at the last meeting, as we just discussed, as you just heard from the EDB, number one, should there be an owner occupant requirement? I think that's still an outstanding question. Number two, should there be a cap on the total number of short-term rental units in town in general? Number three, should there be a cap of total number of short-term rental units in a single building? There was some discussion about whether it should be capped per building. And then number four, which a question that came up through the discussion with the audience in the last meeting, should the owner's agent be a town resident, which is the way that it's written in the ordinance, but there was some discussion about that at the last meeting. And then one additional question that I would like to raise based on recent discussions that have happened around the issue of accessory dwelling units. As you know, the state law has changed regarding accessory dwelling units. The impetus behind the change in the state law was to create more affordable housing units, but unfortunately, the way it was written, it does not exclude using these accessory dwelling units as short-term rentals, but I have been advised by the state officials in charge of regulating these issues that the town could restrict it. So does the town council want to consider putting some type of restriction on the use of accessory dwelling units as short-term rentals, perhaps from this point forward, not looking in arrears or something of that nature, just something that I want to raise as a possibility.
I have a quick question just for a little bit more information that would be helpful, I think, to all of us. Do we have any data on how many 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 unit dwellings there are broken down? if there are 5,495 units, I'm gonna guess that probably, 5,000 of them are single family. I don't know. But do we know how many?
Right now,
Yeah,
no, but I just looked over to Chris
Yeah.
and asked him if that's information that we could obtain. Chris, we can?
No.
We can get that to you.
Yeah,
that'd be
Chris-
really helpful.
Yeah, Chris did provide some information already and, by all means, he could probably refine this even further. He provided that we have 1,559 buildings that are 2 to 5 units. So again, that's kind of a general
I'm sorry, there are 1,000,
559 that are 2 to 5 families. So that's kind of a broad category.
So we only have 32 of these classified being Airbnbs.
So that's how many were registered with the state. Now, when when I pulled the information off AirDNA last month, I think I provided that information to the council. It was in the 70s, according to AirDNA. So, these are active listings. That doesn't mean, in June or May when it becomes
What was
More of a-
what was the deadline to register with the state? Was that January?
January 1, yeah,
Less than 100, we know of.
that we know of.
So getting back to the two to 5 units is 1,500-ish. And there's almost 5,500 dwelling units. So
Yes.
that means there's 4,000 single family homes.
Actually, there's only 2,640 single family homes.
So where does the rest fall in here?
The rest fall into condominiums, apartment complexes, Tourister Mill, 99 Water Street, and then mixed use properties, which is kind of a broad term as well.
Okay, so tourists are being probably 300 of those. Sorry,
Yeah, about 300.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that's okay.
so condos, tourister, 99 water, and then
Apartment buildings.
apartment buildings.
Condos.
Condos, yeah, and apartment building. So really, the ones that are kind of primary for possible restriction would be in that 1,559 that are 2 to 5 family units that are more sort of desirable for somebody to maybe purchase and turn into exclusively short-term rentals. Most condos don't allow it. Most apartments wouldn't allow it. So those 2,604 or the 2,640 are single families. And what was the number that we decided? I guess that would be if you took those two
We took a percentage.
and divided it or reduced it from the 54.
So you can't do it in tourist mills.
No,
I don't, that would be up to them.
I'm
They're rentals.
pretty,
That would be I don't think you
Rentals.
can, I don't think you can sublet it.
Yeah, you
by the
can't
day.
sublet.
Yeah.
at 99 or at Forester.
So of the 1,559 2 to 5s, it's probably majority of those are 2s and 3s. So these like very few 4s and 5s.
Yeah, the majority would be. I could get better numbers, tomorrow. I didn't
And there are-
that, But the majority are 2 to 3 pounds.
And there are no sixes?
No, the 2 to 5 come from because it's a state code that I have to classify, so it's, when I pull that state code, I can get easy numbers on. And drops into that 2 to 5 family. 6 family becomes like an apartment building as a commercial.
And they can't rent. either.
Well, they could if if the owner of the building wanted to, but not the individual tenant couldn't rent it out. In other words, if tourists wanted to
Right,
go
the-
all Airbnb, they could, but the people that live there can't.
That's not an LLC.
Probably is, yeah, but
So
there's
then they
nothing that's
can't.
limited.
I thought an LLC couldn't do it.
No, we didn't, that's what we were talking about, but we didn't actually establish that yet.
I thought that was state law.
No. An
So-
LLC can do it according to the state. We would have to limit it ourselves.
I think the importance of digging down into these units and how they're broken out is that there was some discussion, I know Councilwoman Cronin put a proposal forward that we consider limiting the number of units per dwelling. That's a way to limit the spread, so to speak, of Airbnb. So if we knew how many twos, how many threes, how many, so that when we started to develop policy, it would be more targeted to say, yeah, this is going to affect a significant number of these units. As opposed to just doing something blanket where we're not sure how it's going to affect that range, so to speak.
And we also discussed possibly putting a percentage on it. So if we come up with how many units are available, we came up with a percentage to limit it by that number. In other words, say, let's just pick 1,000. We pick 10%, we have to stop at 100.
Couldn't it also be in different areas of town?
We could do that.
Yeah, the suggestion from the EDB of having
Restricted,
restricted
yeah.
areas is not a bad idea. Getting a map of blocking that out.
But I think it comes down to what we were talking about the last time we talked about this is a balance. And I think Derek mentioned this, it's a balance between, allowing short-term rentals, which are, an economic driver, but limiting them at the same time so that we don't have just a completely transient community. So how do we limit those? What restrictions do we put on it to get that balance, really is what it comes down to. And that's why I think that when Councilwoman Cronin talked about limiting the number of units per dwelling, that's an option, whether it's even legal. I don't know if it is legal. Can we put a limitation of number of rental units within the dwelling
Per dwelling or per building?
per building?
Okay, all right. Yeah, 'cause
The
if-
math didn't seem to make sense though.
I have it written down now because I had it.
What's the?
So there are, I have, and I shared this to Kate, and you're laughing. I have 3 different sort of scenarios. One being the most restrictive and the other 2 allowing a little bit more. So one scenario would be multifamily dwellings or buildings. And I used examples of with 2, 3, 4, and 5, 2 through 6 units, but whatever. Multifamily dwellings or buildings, no more than 50% of the units may be used for short-term rental. So that would restrict 2 and 3 family buildings to 1 unit of short-term rental, which would mean that the other 1 and 2 units would be ostensibly long-term rentals. For a 4 or a 5 family building, 2 units, because half of 4 is 2, half of 5, you can't have 2.5. So you could get 2 short-term rental units out of a 5-unit building or dwelling. The next level of sort of restriction that's a little bit lesser would be a maximum of 2 units per building with no more than 50% of the units being used for short-term rental, whichever allows for the most use. So for your 2, 3, 4, and 5 dwelling or unit dwellings, you could have 2 units in each of those. So it's a maximum of 2 units per building and no more than 50%. So a 5 dwelling building or a 5-unit dwelling, half of 5 is 2.5. So you could still just have 2 units in that 5-unit, or you could take it, be a little bit less restrictive and say in multifamily dwellings or buildings, a maximum of 3 units per building, or no more than 50% of the units may be used for short-term rentals. So that would mean that a 2-family dwelling could use both for short-term rental. So then we would go into the, it wouldn't be owner occupied, or it could be, and they could leave town and short-term rental it while they were away. A 3-family, 4-family, and 5-family could have 3 units. It's a lot of different scenarios, but it does provide some caps and restrictions to somebody coming in and purchasing a 2, 3, 4, or 5 unit dwelling and using it exclusively for short-term rental, it does give the opportunity, or it does protect at least some of those units ostensibly for long-term rental.
But getting back to, how many units we're talking about, those 1,559 of 2 to 5 units, most of them are 2s and 3s. So you're, if you were on the high side of your restriction, if that's what we're going to call it, the 2s and the 3s would get 2 units. Whether
Could only use one of the units for
No,
short-term
on-
rental. For the most
most
restrictive,
restricted, but
for the least restrictive,
you get both of them.
you could get the 2-family, you could get 2 units in one of the scenarios. The 3-family, you could get the 2 and the 3 families, you could get all of the units as short-term with the most unrestricted scenario.
What's unfortunate is that 136 Main Street has never looked better, has never been in as good a shape, has never been less annoying to the neighborhood. So it's an interesting,
And yet, if we put a cap on how many units could be used for short-term rental, then possibly 2 of those units in that building that has never looked better would be long-term rentals. And that would provide housing for somebody on an extended basis, which is part of the reason we're going at this in the first place, is because we have such a housing crisis. So yes, that building looks better. I'd argue doesn't look that cute. It's the finishing.
they didn't change the appearance drastically, but the problem is what was there prior was
Oh, I've looked at it.
not kept up.
Google
doors-
still has the old
It's
pictures.
just like someone cares about it now because they're using
Agreed, but before we started to have this conversation, before the advent of the short-term rental market, people owned those buildings and they were exclusively long-term rentals. Were they maintaining them to
Yeah, not
the
that.
level and the condition that they should be? Not all of
it. I'm
them.
only speaking of that one.
Yeah, and there
I
are
know for a
others.
fact, 'cause it
Yeah.
wasn't.
So here are some suggestions
Actually,
of ways that we could limit.
I got one number that shocks me on the chart we were just provided. It says we've had 408 vacant housing units. in town.
I always find those numbers to be high because some of them are probably seasonal.
Okay.
I seriously doubt that we have 408 available vacant units.
So a seasonally utilized unit is considered vacant,
Yes,
even though it might be only vacant
What's the
for 3
definition
months
of
or 4
vacant?
months.
it's not anybody's primary residence. It's not, I don't know the exact, when they do the census, there's nobody there.
So if you lived in Florida and took the homestead tax in Florida, you wouldn't be considered a resident here, even though you owned it.
It doesn't have to do with the residency. That's a legal definition. This is a
Isn't
census
there a
calculation.
residence, isn't there a homestead tax advantage to being in Florida? That you have to be, because I remember, didn't we have someone once who was.
Florida has a different- Florida has a different taxing structure than Rhode Island does. And it goes more to your income tax as opposed to your property tax. So the property tax rates down there are lower.
Right, but didn't, I don't want to belabor the point.
Yeah.
But I thought that,
It's gotta be 6 months.
oh, so there
You
is.
gotta live someone more than 6 months.
That is the.
You had someone who was had a position here.
So if you're not here for 6 months, it's considered vacant.
Probably, yeah.
But to your surprise, yeah, it's a big number,
Yeah.
but there certainly are many people that do leave for X amount of.
And
Yep.
And
consider their residence leaving someplace else.
All right,
It could even be 3 months. Somebody's down in Florida, the census taker shows up, there's nobody there. That could be part of it too.
all right, back on track here.
Yeah.
So we're still looking at ways to limit or not limit.
Correct, yeah.
Any other questions, comments on this side?
I'm starting to feel more and more like I'd like to see the problems that are gonna come out of what we're trying to prevent versus, I mean, that we could then. Deal with directly due to the fact that they're problems. Versus trying to think of all different scenarios and prevent things that haven't happened yet. I think there should be some measures, but. I don't know, I don't feel great about trying to read the future.
I don't disagree. This was just an angle
Oh,
of
no, I'm
going at
glad
it.
that you gave
Yeah,
numbers that we can comprehend this time.
So I'm a big fan, and I'm a big fan of policing yourself. Agree. Gary, I agree. We have to come up with something. It's just how deep are we gonna dive into this? Eventually, we need to say, okay, enough's enough. We've got to where we are going to live with, and let's address something that comes up as it presents itself. So I'm a big fan of allowing them to police themselves, and if there's an issue, we're gonna control these licenses. That we've all agreed on, correct? It's going to come to council.
Well, we have to agree on.
Yeah, so if the buck stops with us, then if we allow them to do whatever they want to do until there's a problem, we could have no issues that ever come back before us. As long as we have our own guidelines. One
What are
of
they
the,
gonna be? That's where we're
I
at.
get it. Without limiting it, I can just see this mushrooming and blowing out of control.
Yeah, we
Either we put a percentage, say we got, a maximum of 100, maximum of 110.
Yep.
Something like that, then it'll.
I'm fine with
it can
that.
be It
Yeah.
can be self-policing.
I'm
But if we
fine
don't
with,
put a limit, we could end up with 1,000 and then all of a sudden we got a problem. Now we got 1,000 units that we don't know what
Yeah.
to deal with.
I'm also fine with, either a percentage, because that would definitely eliminate somebody coming in and buying up 10 properties that were just gonna do, short-term rentals on it. If you want to do 50%, I'm fine with that, but
percentage of what?
the building itself, like your little math
Okay,
exam you're
Okay,
coming up
okay.
with, yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah,
So it would limit 1 to a 3.
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
that's- I
fine
could-
with that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Going back to the economic development, so I was struggling with the owner occupied, occupied, the fees. So were you recommending either one? I just didn't want to put you on the spot, but I was just a little confused with that.
So we make a distinction between people who already live in the community, who have a spare room, a vacant property that's seasonal, and they want to make a little extra money by renting it out for a period of time. And someone from out of state or out of town, at least, who comes in and tries to make an investment, could pay a little bit more for the cost that impact is having on the town. So we were thinking there's a slight difference in the fee that would be charged.
So a hometown discount.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's
Yeah.
$25.
No, I know, yeah, I was like,
Terry, on your proposal with the two, so one would, that would 50% wouldn't apply to that, so one could have one.
it
could rent
depends
out
on which
Yeah.
one. The most restrictive would be no more than 50%.
I think you're talking about a single family.
Yeah, a single family.
Single
For a single
family.
That wouldn't be, so if you had
Oh,
a single
for a
family, you could rent, you could do it with that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of covered in
Yeah.
the sleeping room, you
Two
can
per
have
bedroom.
2 people per bedroom. And then, this doesn't really address single family homes. But
yeah.
that's kind of addressed by the number of bedrooms that are in a home. Although you could have, there are some homes downtown that are, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms. And, could somebody rent their entire property out? Or, as I had given an example, there are currently on Airbnb, or there were when I looked into this, Airbnb specifically, there's entire vacation home hosted by Tyler. And then it says 15 guests. And then below that, it says 6 bedrooms, 10 beds, 3 baths. So if we were to pass the
two per.
what we were saying, 2
Yeah.
people per bedroom, then Tyler's in violation.
Well, he loses his pull-out couch.
Exactly.
He's gonna go from 15 to 12.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Right.
there, that
Yeah.
could restrict a entire dwelling that has multiple bedrooms in it that might be used for Airbnb. But
But not really.
it's
I mean, if
supposed
they-
to be,
Bedrooms, they had 5 bedrooms, they could have 10
10
people, or there's 6 bedrooms, they could have 12 people,
yeah,
so.
but
mean,
this is sort
not
of
restricted.
advertising it as taking more people, but adults are, children 12 and under are not considered. So you could throw the kids on the couch and still be within the confines of what we're writing.
Anthony?
Yeah, I hate to throw a monkey wrench into this, but you also got to take a look at the flip side. I'm wondering if there are any single family residential dwellings in town that have just one bedroom.
So they're 50%, they're already out of luck.
Okay, because,
That's if we're gonna go, so,
but hold on.
Yeah,
The
go
reason
ahead.
I say this is under the zoning enabling act, section 45-24-31, subsection 35-2. Defines a household, and it can either be a family, or if it's a bunch of people living together. And it was passed because of the issues that they get in college towns, Newport and Narragansett, and Providence. And the definition there is a town can regulate the amount of people living in a single family dwelling, so long as the minimum is no less than 3. Now, to me, this is a little bit of a stretch because you're talking about short-term rentals, but that's just something to keep in mind.
So a single family home with 1 bedroom would only, under this ordinance, if we passed it, would only allow 2
Yes,
and not 3.
there could be a challenge with somebody saying, well, under the zoning enabling act, you can't do that because you can only go to a minimum of 3. To me, this is a short-term rental. So, household doesn't really apply, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And how many single family homes have only 1 bedroom?
I don't know. That's why I'm bringing it up. It might not be
Probably
any.
not many.
I would think not many at all.
Couple of little cottages,
Yeah.
you know,
All right, so it's
But the 2 per bedroom, if that's the case, then you're okay under the zoning enabling act.
it sounds, let me just think where we stand right now. It sounds like we're kind of at a consensus for the first proposal, the restricted one that Carrie made, 2 to 5, 50%. The other one is maximum of 2 occupants per bedroom over the age of 12. Did you want to add that?
That's in. the-
well, that's,
Okay, so
That's
It's
two,
already in the-
maximum 2 occupants per bedroom. The other thing I was thinking is, do we still, Kate said we have somewhere around 70. Would we want to, at this time, put a number on that, of a maximum of, say, 125 or 150?
70 what?
She said we currently have 70 that are advertised on the page for the Airbnb.
Units that are being.
There are 70 units available.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Do
Are
we
they
want to put a
registered?
number, maybe at 1, we can always change the numbers.
Okay.
Do we want to put a number at 125 to see how it goes? If we get more, we can always change that number because it's an ordinance, right? We could always change it like we do with liquor license.
mhm.
But we wouldn't, if people were following the law, though, they wouldn't be applying.
No, but what I'm saying is if we find that we're losing way too much housing
How,
stock,
that's what I mean. How do we know?
if we limit, well, we would be
If we
able to.
limit the number and people look at the amount that are allowed in town and then they don't apply for them. So you won't know if it's ever grown.
Well, if we go from 70 to 125, we almost doubled. We're only at 70 and change now, and we only have, how many
What
legal?
I mean is, if we put it 150 cap, I'm saying,
Yeah,
so then you don't know how much further it's gonna go because wouldn't it be advertised that you?
yeah, well, what we could, obviously, we can look on the internet and see how many are there, are opening up, and also, she said 70, but there's only so many legal ones, this page here. These are the only legal, no, the other page we have, there's only like
32.
32 legal
32,
ones.
correct.
So we're only at, technically, we're only at 32 legal.
Well, I think that was I think that, what was your reasoning for the 32 and 70?
Well, I just checked the most recent listing on AirDNA, and right now they're showing 35 active rentals.
Okay,
So I would assume that you're gonna see that change as the seasons change.
yeah,
There's
so
35 active right
Active
now.
Meaning you're actively listed. It doesn't mean they're
Correct.
not 300 in town already, they're just not actively listed.
Right. For what I'm, no, they're not there, if they, January 1 was the deadline to file with the state, so if they didn't file with the
Oh.
state, they're illegal.
All right.
So I'm saying we only have 35 that are legal. I'm just saying, if we put it, and if there's 35 legal now, in a year's time, if we get up to 125, we're gonna have to pay some more serious attention to that. So if we put, and we can change the limit if everything's going great. I just don't want to see it blow up out of proportion before we get it,
I agree.
before we get our hands on it. If we're only at 35 now, if we go to 125, that's almost 3.5 times as much as we currently have.
If we're gonna vote on this thing as a total package, I'm probably against it.
Okay.
There are sections and parts that I feel need some watchdog, but overall, I don't know, I still feel like the problems that we're trying to identify haven't happened yet.
But isn't it kind of like the horse getting out of the barn? You know, where you don't.
Yeah, I want to be proactive.
I mean, if
because I saw
we're
that.
not proactive and we all of a sudden get this, a big influx, then,
Then we
You know,
call the
it's-
meeting and.
you
we
see
put
the-
this-
well, but you can't take them away. It's-
You see the nightmares,
That's
you
what
see the
we do.
nightmares in the other towns.
Wait a minute,
That's
wait.
happened.
Grant just made a point that I might be confused about. If we pass this, we are taking them away. 136 Main Street is currently used. So 100% are taking away. So if we have.
But they're
nothing-
grandfathered in.
No, they're not.
Not
If-
a-
Right now,
If we have problems, we then convene and we can create these rules and ordinances for the town of Warren at any time.
in land use, if a use is lawful at the time it's established, then it's considered to be a prior non-conforming use.
So 136 Main gets to stay.
Yeah.
So the whole
Yes.
idea of having long-term rentals there and feeling good about the housing stock, that wouldn't happen.
No, see, what would happen is if you attempted to regulate 136 after the fact, the reply would be, well, when I established the use, it was lawful. So now it continues as a prior non-conforming use,
I get it.
So.
Now, I have.
unless abandoned.
So
I have
this would be.
Two questions on that. No, you just, my second part of that. My first one is, because this is not zoning, this is an ordinance, do they still have that same protection?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay, and the second one is if they decide, say they've got this many units and then they decide to go full-term, long-term rental on one, they can't go back to short-term on that one they went to.
That's correct. Yes, they lose the use.
Okay.
And what about other,
Proactively prevent.
No, we're just,
No, proactively prevent.
right, yeah, in other words, if
So
they,
we're not taking these away.
Anthony says if they have it, they can keep it.
All right.
and what about existing
I wasn't-
2,
Yeah.
3, and 4 family dwellings that have, say, two units that they're, 2 family that has 2 units, short-term rental, they would be able to continue doing that as a pre-existing non-conforming condition.
Yes.
If they were legally established.
If they were
which means
legally-
if they are on this list.
If they were playing by the rules.
Correct.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Right.
If you don't, if it's not lawful and doesn't comply, then what I just said doesn't count.
So I think that gets back to this idea that we're gonna try to put some.
Going forward.
Regulations going
Right.
forward, because, you know, once you approve it, you can't take it back. And so I think there's a fear that it might get out of control. Maybe that's a little excessive,
That's what my fear is.
but
Once it
I think that's
all
a
hell
fear.
breaks loose, it's kind of hard to get it back.
But can't we change it though?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you said like if it gets out of control, then we can't take it back.
Well, I mean,
Only out of the 32 that we have, we can't take it, but
no,
down the
no,
road.
if we don't put something in place now and people continue to utilize it,
That
then
I
we can't
understand.
take them back, you know, it's, so you might end up, you might get to a place where it's what we consider excessive. And you say, wow, I wish we had, held it back a little further, because now we're in a place where it's extreme and we didn't
Yeah.
plan for that. I
and we can't,
Right.
yeah, if they've
Because we
already
didn't act.
established it, yeah. I think there are still,
Doing a great job.
Okay.
there's still many issues.
All right,
there.
well, yeah, that's why I want,
To
let's
continue.
try to get a consensus on each one as we go.
We're a long
So
way from.
it's, it sounds like on this part here, I don't see we're unanimous, but it sounds like the consensus is agreeing with the 2 to 5, 50%. The most restrictive, 2 occupants, 2 per bedroom, which is already in there. The only thing that I was hoping to add to this would be a maximum of, say, 125, which is about 4 times than we already have. We can always increase that number. I just want to, if we have a number set and we get there too fast and there's a problem, we don't have to go back. So that kind of sounds like.
No, I agree with you.
consensus, So if
I
somebody would
agree
like
with
to.
As opposed to a percentage of the overall units, which I think
Correct.
yours is easier. to-
Yeah, a round number instead of keeping percentage. So
Right.
if we could possibly get a motion to proceed with those 3 points, then we can move on to the next item.
So moved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second, all in favor.
I,
Okay, so you got that.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, so it's, that's unanimous. So that right there is where we're looking to go on that part of it. Now, the next big part of it is, how do we want to deal with the parking?
I don't think that the way that the language in section 9. Part B is works. I don't, so if there's one, I don't think that it's realistic or reasonable to require 1 off-street parking space for each unit of short-term rental in a building. I think that there are successful and non-nuisance, very happily operating short-term rental buildings downtown anyways that aren't creating a parking nuisance. So I think that's overly restrictive. The lawn part, yeah, we don't want people parking on the lawn. But I think there needs to be, if we were to keep with all of this language after the 18 feet part that describes how big the parking space should be, I think it should say, or a parking plan shall be submitted to the council for approval or relief with an alternative parking, with alternative parking options provided, and any complaints will trigger a review. I think it's a little over the top to require all of this. I don't need to know the make and the model and the license plate of the cars. I mean, I don't ask that of my customers. So I think that's a little over the top.
Yeah, I agree that the making the model and all of that is a little.
But I think we definitely need to give, especially, there are a number of very successful short-term rental operations going on downtown that sort of do the best they can with what they got in terms of parking.
well,
I
so,
don't think it's unreasonable to provide that that the owner needs to provide a plan or.
and that's what my response is gonna be. So if there is somebody who's doing this, before we even come up with this, then great. Come forward, give us your plan, and we'll give you our blessing.
Yeah.
But our parking plan still should be like, you need to provide an off-street parking space. For the make and model stuff, get rid of that stuff. But if you can't provide off-street parking, then come to us and tell us how you're doing it. Because you know something, maybe I'll take what you're doing and I'll spread it around so everybody else can do it. But to just do nothing, I think could be problematic.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting we do nothing.
Okay.
I think that saying, preference is that there's an off-street parking.
And if you can't, then come show
But
us
if
what
you
you got.
can't, you gotta show us what
Perfect.
you're.
Can I,
Yeah, well, I'm just, all right, so in other words, basically, Kerry, I think what you guys are saying is you have to provide 1 parking space for each unit, or each rental. Or if you cannot, you have to come to the council and present a parking plan for us to approve. Is that what we're saying?
Mhm.
The rest of the stuff is, I mean, we don't have to say the size of the spaces and all of that. I
No.
agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that kind of where we're at there?
I think
Perfect.
that works.
And I think I guess it would be on a case-by-case basis, but as I've said before, and I believe because I know it to be true, not all visitors who take advantage of our short-term rentals downtown anyways are driving cars. So there are situations where people are on public transportation getting Ubers, riding their bikes, using all sorts of alternative modes of transportation that are not four wheels with a,
But in order to rent, let me be clear, you're gonna say that you need to provide a parking place or ask for a waiver. So you have to
Correct. You
provide,
have to come to
you have
the
to
council.
provide an off-street parking place or ask for a waiver.
Yeah,
yes,
and one off-street parking place per dwelling unit.
Right, or ask for a waiver.
You're gonna rent out.
So we'll know
if you
if
need
somebody
to.
says, I'm gonna have 12 parking.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be public.
Well, the perfect
They live on
example,
Water
she said
Street.
6 bedrooms, that's 12 people. You're not gonna get 12 people in an Uber, you
No,
know?
but I'm saying if they
Couple
they
ways.
come in front of us and then we don't have to even designate by neighborhood, because if they say it's one street. Like across from Mercy's, well, now what? It's all public parking. So
Right,
they
well, yeah,
can-
each situation's gonna be different, I
Right.
mean,
But I do think that, typically, short-term rentals have less impact on parking than long-term rentals. So
I agree.
that argument has been made. So, but I'm comfortable with this situation where you say, this is a requirement, but you can also come in front of us
And ask.
and
requirements
ask
to be
for,
We can
waived.
ask for a waiver.
Yeah.
waiver. And, make a
Okay,
determination.
public, please come forward.
Mark Donovan, 22.
Liberty Street. There we go.
There you go.
I'm curious about the enforcement mechanism for all of this. My experience running an Airbnb, this was a number of years ago. I rented out a bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it wasn't in Warren, but I didn't have to go before the town or the city.
Times are changing.
Yeah, so
Times are
it's
changing.
a necessity that someone show up here and say, I want to start an Airbnb.
No,
Times are
there's an application.
Yeah.
The only time you would have to come before us is if you cannot provide one parking space per unit rented.
So
Then
does
you would have to come before
So
us.
does Airbnb lay out the guidelines for the town of Warren?
No, we should.
That's that's the ordinance that we're talking about, right? And the registration would go through the clerk's office.
Okay, but so if I go on Airbnb tonight and say I want to rent out a bedroom in my house here in Warren, is there some mechanism that refers me to the town of Warren?
No. You
Right.
should- What's gonna refer you to the town of Warren is once we pass this ordinance, everyone that has a B and B in the town of Warren is going to have to register with the clerk. The registration form to say yes. In other words, you had registered with the state now is required. You're also gonna be required to register and get a permit or a license. I'm not sure what it would be from the town of Warren.
Okay, so if I start like a pirate Airbnb, I sign up with them, list my room, but I don't tell anyone in town, who is gonna find me?
Your neighbors.
The internet, the neighbors, the internet's an amazing thing. If you're asking to rent it to somebody, I can go online and say, yeah, I'll rent it. And when you give me the address, you're busted.
Can I answer your question?
Thanks.
Like so many other things, there's an affirmative duty on the part of the person that's offering their property for rent.
Mhm.
To make sure that they comply with all state and local ordinances. Right now in the state of Rhode Island, you have to register with the Department of Business Regulation. And it's the responsibility of the property owner to also make sure that they comply with local regulations too.
Right, but as Ms. Michaud already said, there's 35 that are listed with the state, and there are currently 75. It's the middle of winter. That means there's probably 230.
No,
this
she
summer.
corrected. She looked again. She said there was 39
Okay,
currently listed on.
but there's
B&B.
already a discrepancy, right?
Correct.
So here's the thing,
Mhm.
right? Like anything else that you do,
Do so at
you
your
run
own
the
property.
risk of, if you don't check on your, if
Sure,
you don't check,
yeah.
you run the risk of being in violation and being caught. The question is how does the town find out? I think the comments from the council are correct. Somebody's gonna say something, they always do. That's the first.
A
thing.
neighbor, a
And the
competitor,
second thing is,
a competitor.
It'll say Warren.
And the second thing is, you gotta register with the state. They check on it with the Airbnb and the rest of them. And the town's gonna be checking on who's registered in Warren too, so. That's the enforcement mechanism.
Sure, if the town is doing their due diligence and checking. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, and times may have changed. I haven't listed an Airbnb in a number of years, but the whole thing worked on piracy. every lake, I did it in New York City, which had extremely stringent regulations about who could run an Airbnb. I didn't list mine. Nobody listed theirs. The whole thing operated under the radar and off the books. So is that going to happen?
And you know what
Is that
changed
going
it?
to happen to Warren?
Do you know what changed it?
No, I don't.
Is when Airbnb started making deals with all the states of paying the tax revenue that they were collecting.
Hmm.
Before they didn't do it. So probably when you were doing it in New York, you weren't paying or collecting any taxes. Now Airbnb does it with all 50 states that they collect revenue and pay the taxes. VRBO is starting to do the same thing.
Okay.
So that's where the regulatory and the due diligence comes in. When I tell you the state wants their money, the state wants their money.
Sure.
I
Okay,
do
fair enough.
think Mr. Dobbin brings up a good point about enforcement, as it is the issue with any ordinance. We can pass any ordinance we want, but it's always about enforcement. Thank you. And I think where that line is when does somebody tip into that short term from a long term? They can call it long term and get away with much more. And once they become a short term, they fall under this ordinance.
Right, well,
And so, there's a line there.
I have a quick question for the solicitor real quick. Has the state identified the long-term, short-term on tax revenue collection? Some states do more than 6 months. So if you go 6 months in a day, you don't have to pay tax on that to the state. Has Rhode Island adopted that yet?
Kate, I thought it was 30 days.
yeah, 30
So,
days or less.
Rhode Island's going with the 30-day adoption of tax collection. If it's over 30 days, they're gonna identify it as long-term and you wouldn't pay tax.
That's my understanding, correct?
Yeah, and then, okay, all right.
I do think there is, we have to keep in mind that enforcement oversight, can take, the time of our municipal employees, and, we have to be careful about that, that's all, because,
That's a $500 fine, isn't it?
well, that's another.
We'll get there, we'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back, we're on parking here. I think we're at consensus where we're gonna require one per rental unit, or you need to come before the council and request a waiver. Are we on the same page here?
Yes.
Okay, Kate?
Just to clarify, I did add a section at the very end on waivers, stating that the town council upon good cause could waive any licensing requirement of the article. Do you want to just repeat that or?
Let's keep that in there in place, but specifically, let's call out parking that they have to come before us if they want that waiver.
Okay.
Yeah. That make sense?
Yeah, they have to have
Yeah.
one,
Okay,
or
so
they have to come in front of us.
can we have a motion for the parking aspect?
So moved.
We have a motion,
Second.
we have a second, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
okay, so that's where we're going on the parking. Next, did we have any until we get to, I think we were pretty much okay on the rest of it.
Did
We
we,
just-
we agree on the fees that are number 8? There's question marks and $50 in here. Fee for
Yeah,
registering.
where do we want to go on the fees?
Because the suggestion from the EDB about, the hometown advantage. If you live
Hometown
in
discount,
discount,
there we go.
if you live in
Yep.
town, you pay. I don't know what the industry standard is. What did we say? Newport's charging 100. For not owner occupied.
Well, where are we comfortable with the fees?
Fee for registering dwelling units under this chapter shall be X for each bedroom in the unit with a.
Ever
minimum
follow the
fee.
normal business fee? What was it, $25 for a business? Yeah, no different than any other business.
So if I make the way this was written, and I apologize, I don't remember which town this was copied from, was that if it's not owner occupied, it would be per bedroom with a minimum threshold. And if it was owner occupied, then it would be a flat fee regardless of how many bedrooms are within the unit. So that was kind of a hometown advantage.
Oh, yeah.
But again, that's for
Yeah.
discussion.
How about owner occupied? I like the $50 better than 25. Owner occupied, $50, non-owner occupied, $100 per bedroom per year. Does that make sense? Or per rental unit, in other words, if you got,
Per rental unit.
in other words, because if you've got, well, I consider a bedroom a rental unit, in other words, if you rent out one unit that's got, 3 bedrooms. Right, that's more for a single family, but yeah. But,
So you could say, okay, so what was the original one? If you're owner occupied?
the original was $50 maximum for owner occupied properties, but non-owner occupied, it was $50. per bed.
$50, and then you
per-
could say $25 per
Could
bedroom.
do that.
So this means we're looking at having non-owner occupied units.
Well, we still got it. That's probably, we should probably go adjusted that first. What section is that in the requirement for the owner occupied, Anthony?
I don't think it's in here.
It's not.
It's not in here.
You're not talking about the zoning enabling.
No, I'm talking about what we've got here for the draft. Did we put in owner occupied in this or we did not?
And
Okay.
we didn't limit units either, which is something that we want to do.
I think we did. We put the 125, Mac. That was in the first motion.
Correct, no, but that's not in this document.
Oh, no,
We're
that's
adding
gonna
it.
be
That's
added,
in the
right?
notes.
All right, so before, I guess maybe before we get to the fees, let's talk about how we want to deal with the owner occupied registered agent. What are we going to do with that?
Well, that's further on down the line, so I guess going back to that, that has to be decided.
Yeah, because the local representative is
local-
on page 5 of 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Talks about.
but I mean, if we decide we're not going to do it, then we don't have to have different fees.
I'm in opposition to exclusive owner occupied.
Okay.
So I think that if we create a fee schedule whereby owner occupied gets a certain rate and non-owner occupied or non-Warren resident owned has additional fees.
So,
I'm comfortable with
all right,
that.
so the local representative, if we're not going to go owner occupied, that kind of sounds like where we're at, right? What's the feeling on owner occupied?
I think there has to be a local representative.
Okay,
There's gotta be
I
somebody.
agree with that.
okay, yeah, so that's,
Agreed.
sounds, now,
Either
all,
hired
Yep.
or relative.
so that's fine, and
Somebody's
actually,
Gonna be.
and I believe the local representative should be, the application should mandate who the local representative is, so the town has the contact.
Absolutely.
And
That is-
if there's a change, we need to be
Needs to be
notified.
posted.
Yeah.
My only question is about the requirement that that individual reside in the town of Warren. You know, someone could live in Barrington or Bristol and be literally 5 minutes away. So to me, it's more about how close they are in proximity
To Rhode
to,
Island.
to the property.
All of,
to-
no, I mean, all of Rhode Island is 45 minutes away.
That's
the
maybe a little
referee-
excessive.
Yeah, but the representative, I want the representative local. If there's a problem at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want the police chief to find this guy and knock on his door.
But
and
if
say, "Can
somebody
you
lives-
fix this?"
But if somebody lives right over the border in Barrington or right over the border in Bristol, it seems like that's close enough.
Yeah, but where do we put that? And
Well,
in Warren, if they live in Warren, it's completely under our jurisdiction to go knock on their door at 3 in the morning.
The police can do a notification in other communities too.
We could do a radius, we could do 10 minutes, or some communities say within 30 minutes, say, because
So I'm in line with the council president. I think you need to provide us somebody, I don't care if they're on Jupiter or they're next door.
sure.
Is that when the phone rings, they answer it. Doesn't go to voicemail, doesn't go, we'll get back to you as soon as we
But
can.
does that have to be a Warren resident? Could it be somebody right outside? Like, in other
Yeah.
words,
But I really do need
somebody brought up
somebody.
the example of their lawyers in Providence. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that, maybe Providence is a bit of ways away and it shouldn't be their lawyer,
But the biggest point is that they need to respond.
Yeah,
They
it's-
still could possibly.
And there's a
solve the
fine if they
problem.
don't.
It doesn't necessarily
Correct.
mean
It's
Yeah,
possible.
correct. Yep.
toilets clogged, all right, I'm gonna call a plumber.
Well, we're not gonna.
No, we're not-
If the
that's-
toilet's clogged, you're not gonna call us,
We're
but
not-
like if the neighbors.
I mean. the
Oh, yeah.
representative.
No, the reason why I like the representative is for like the noise.
The noise
Three
ordinance.
o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely.
The noise.
You have
That's,
to have
that's
that.
the main
Yeah.
reason I want somebody close that's
I-
gonna answer.
I was only bringing up the idea of residency requirement for Warren. I'm wondering if there's another way we can do it with sort of a
10
radius or
15-mile radius.
maybe something like that, which, I mean, because the way the community.
Yeah.
So in other words,
If there's an Airbnb that's out in Tuisset Point. Or if there's an Airbnb that's on Water Street, well, the person in Barrington can get to, if your
sooner.
local
Listen,
agent is in Barrington, they can get to you quicker than you could get to
Correct.
Tuisset Point if you're the agent for there.
Correct.
So
If we go a
Having a
15
perimeter or a,
15-mile radius, not
Yeah.
from the unit, that's from
From the center of Warren.
Yeah.
Something. I would, That makes more sense to me.
Anthony?
You gotta be careful with the 15-mile radius because
As the crow
when
flies.
you do that, you get hit, it's Greenwich. When you go across the bay. So.
How about a 15-minute travel time? How would we measure
Yeah,
that?
but then it depends on the
Yeah.
time
Yeah,
of day.
traffic.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Bristol County.
I was gonna say
Bristol
East
County?
Bay.
Okay.
East-
County,
East
Rhode
Bay.
Island.
Yeah, East Bay,
Okay.
Love it.
yeah, I like
That
it.
sound good, to
Yeah,
everybody?
great.
Sure.
All right, so we're gonna go with the local representative as written, except instead of living in the town of Warren, we're gonna go must reside in the Bristol County,
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Have a presence. They have to have a
Okay,
presence.
can we have a motion to proceed that?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second, all in
Second.
favor? Aye, okay. Now we can get back to the fee because we are going to allow non-owner occupied, so let's get back to the fees now. How do we want to deal with the fees?
I think you,
What page are the fees on?
Councilwoman
three.
Cronin mentioned
$50 and then 25 for each bedroom for.
Yeah, if you're owner occupied, or if you live in the town of Warren, it's a $50 registration
Flat.
fee.
And if you are not owner occupied, then it's $50 plus 25 per bedroom. Is that what we said?
that's what I heard.
Yep, 50
Okay,
plus 25.
Should we just make it a flat $100 and it's only covering the application paperwork?
we do that too?
And they're trying to cover the cost of the clerk. $100.
I don't have a problem with
Is it
that.
hometown? You get a discount as your owner occupied? No.
This is good. Who's gonna do anything differently for $100, $25, whatever? Somebody wants to make the buck, they're gonna put up the money.
So here's what I say, yes to that, because $100 flat fee for anybody, whatever. But then when we get to our penalties and enforcements and violations, then we can get a little more creative and punitive if we need to.
Okay,
So moved.
Sure.
all right, so we have a motion for $100 flat fee per unit, whatever we're describing, rental or unit, however we're wording it,
Application.
per application, okay, and each unit requires an application, so,
So,
yeah.
There you go.
Per
All right.
dwelling unit.
Yeah, so we have a motion to support that, please.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we got that. Hey, we're going through this pretty good. I think the only thing we have left now is going to be the enforcement and penalty phase.
The owner obligations, it gets a little detailed. Ordinance, does it get into the number and location of on-site spaces applicable? This is where I think,
Page 6.
For 3 of 6 down the bottom. Going back to the owner's obligations.
yeah, I'm just making sure that the part about
registration.
register parking or car registration,
Yeah.
that we get rid of
Then
that.
we took all that out.
Well, that was in the parking part, but it wasn't actually in that part.
I didn't
Is
think it
in
was in what Ms. Michelle gave us.
It is.
there? It is somewhere.
It's
Yeah,
on
it's
page
number 4. It's actually on page 4.
Yeah, there you go, number 4. So.
Yeah, we can strike, can we have a motion to take out section 4?
The whole
So-
section, so.
I believe so,
We don't
yeah.
need any information about motor vehicles.
Yeah.
Motion, do we have a second?
second,
We have a motion and a second to remove section 4 of the owner's obligations. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we can go to the violations. I have municipal court or housing court in highlights. Anthony, which would be the best court to put it to?
Housing.
Housing, okay. Okay, so we got $1,000 per violation for each day the violation is there.
Not more than.
Not more
Not
than,
more than
Is there,
$1,000 per day,
is
right?
there a limit?
Or- should be like not less than 100 per day and no more than 1,000, depending on the violation.
Yeah, I want to put it, I think we should have a minimum in there to. And then leave it at the discretion of the. The
$100
housing
is
court.
pretty-
100, yeah, not less than 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, but $100 is pretty simple to pay for a violation.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's not much of a
$1,000.
disincentive, which is,
You want to violate these rules, you want to do business in Warren, the responsibilities of the operator. $1,000.
So just change it, subject to a fine of $1,000 per day. And Anthony, are we legal by that?
I suggest you, just to conform with section 1-8 of your code, just say a fine not exceeding $1,000.
Okay, so we can't set, can we set a minimum?
You can.
Okay, minimum of 500 if we can't can't keep it straight at 1,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
Not less than,
Not less than
Form
500, but not more than $1,000 per day? We
and this
sound-
is determined by the housing court judge.
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
We sounding good there?
Yeah,
Yep.
makes more
Good to
sense.
go.
A motion to proceed to those changes?
people understand money. They're gonna control their operation. They're not gonna want to spend $1,000 a day, so fine.
Okay, can we have a motion to?
So moved.
amend that?
Second.
Motion in a second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, I think that's it. Kate, did you have any open areas that we needed to button up to finally get this past first reading? Actually, Anthony, can we pass this as first reading with the proposed changes?
Correct.
Okay.
The motion would be to set it down for a second reading at next month's meeting with the changes that you set forth tonight.
Kate, do you have anything open that you need us to answer?
The only other question was about accessory dwelling units, and if you want to address accessory.
Yeah,
dwelling
could we
units.
refer that to the planning board for, because it's a zone, it would be a zoning change, correct?
I gotta tell you, I'm working on a memo for you, zoning board, because they'd asked for it. Building official, because he's asked for it, and planning board on the new ADU law.
Okay.
And I've got to tell you that there's a lot of different opinions among solicitors as to exactly what it means. And I want to make sure that when this comes, everybody here is on the same page. So I'd recommend that you hold off on that,
Okay.
depending on what you think about the ADU law, because there are some things that the town can do in light of that. You may want to amend it at that, and may want to amend this at that time.
If we go back to the short-term rentals, could we put something in there that says ADU units are not eligible for short-term rentals?
I'm gonna give you a tentative yes, but I really want to make sure that when I give that advice, it's the correct and proper advice.
Okay, so, all right, so sounds like we're there. Can we have a motion to move ordinance short-term residential rentals to second reading next month?
So moved.
And second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we got through that, nice. I'm all flustered now. I lost my agenda.
So hungry.
This is you right here. No, this is you.
Oh, this is me, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we did ordinance. Next, we're past 7 o'clock, so we can go to public hearing number 1. Request for a designated disability parking space. We discussed this last month.
Did the traffic commission get back to us?
We got a
What is
report,
budget?
the traffic advisory commission.
Motion to approve. Recommended on the Traffic Advisory Commission.
We have a
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'm gonna do PH2 before I go back to the budget public hearing, sorry. We have a public hearing for a transfer, actually, wait a minute, let's go backward. Now a motion to close the public hearing, PH1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Can we have a motion to approve the disability parking space?
So moved.
And second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, next public hearing number 2 for a transfer of BV beverage vitrilling license from Crossroad Pub to VK Holdings, Inc.
Applicants here.
Yep.
Come on down.
How you doing, John?
Hello,
Good evening.
hello. Okay, John was here last month, so we kind of have an idea what's going on. Apparently, you're going to be taking the business over from him.
Correct.
Very sad to see him go.
Usually doesn't go too far.
That's a landmark in Warren, but, okay, so
Rhode Island.
that's a landmark in Rhode Island. You're right. Thanks, Joe. So we have the application. Do we have any questions from the council on this?
Motion to approve.
And I'll
Joe,
second.
can you put in your motion pending satisfying all requirements of the city clerk, of the town clerk?
The solicitor has
Yeah,
a
if
question.
Anybody's here to speak on that?
Oh, yes. Is there anyone here to speak
Oh,
on
yeah, we
the,
have to close the public hearing.
on the public hearing? for the transfer of the vitrilling license.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve contingent on all requirements being met.
Second,
Motion and a second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
40 years, John? Was it 40? 45? 45.
You are all set and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Good luck, good luck,
Oh,
John.
you will.
Good luck.
You will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's go back to the first thing we had on the agenda. It was the public hearing on the budget. Basically, regarding the start time for budget meetings and public hearings. Any input?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock is what we've been
6
doing, right?
o'clock? Okay, can we have, and that would be for both the meetings and the public hearings?
Yes,
Okay, can we have a motion?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And the next one is the discussion and solicit comments from residents related to the goals and objectives of the fiscal year 2023. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to these? Please come forward.
Jenny Flanagan, 46 Washington Street.
Hi.
Good to see you all.
Good to
Happy
see
New
you.
Year. I encourage you with the transition to a new town planner to have adequate funds in the line item for town planner and or assistant town planner that we can be competitive. We are a small town with great ambitions, and I would hate to see any of those ambitions fall down because we haven't made adequate room in the budget to get someone who can carry these forward and bring us more new, fresh ideas to make the town even more amazing than it is right now. So.
Thank you.
Oh, and then also, I'm on the Barrington Land Conservation Trust. For years, we've been talking about the detention pond next to Hill Farm Preserve, which is back behind Jade Engineering on New Industrial Way. That detention pond no longer functions properly. It becomes a toxic soup of algae in the summertime. We are working with Save the Bay and Southern New England, SNEP, whatever SNEP stands for,
Yeah.
to environmental program to get funding for a study to get that redesigned. I want to make sure there's room in the budget for whatever town participation would be needed for that study as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to speak on the budget?
Should I say something that someone from the public who couldn't be here told me? Is that?
You're the proxy?
Minor council.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, what's her name? Oh, God, I can't remember her last name. No, she does the flower.
O'Connell, Elizabeth O'Connell.
Elizabeth O'Connell is requesting additional funds. I think, was it $400 that we put? She wants additional funds from what we have now. And she requested that. And I told her that I would bring that forward to the council and hopefully we would adjust that during the budget meetings and hopefully she could be present at that time. Okay.
She will get a request to my office to bring her request forward. Usually she writes a letter that goes into your budget books with a request in it.
And I have one thing. I know we had that whole survey done on our roads. When we finally get into the budgets, could we possibly get the list of the order of the streets or what the plan is, if we're gonna repave, which streets we're gonna do, so we could look at it as we're going through the budget?
We're working on that. They come comparing their data to, what they got and what we've done in the past, so they can make sure everything marries up the way they think it should.
Okay,
We should have that information soon.
thank you.
Yeah, that ties into a specific request we have.
Yes,
right?
which was
Yeah.
on, yes.
Yeah.
All right, can we have a motion to close that public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Actually, again, let's re-vote on the start time of 6 o'clock for meetings and public hearings.
6 o'clock, motion to start at 6 o'clock.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we did all the public hearings. We have P2, which is a request to install a new pole number 3 for a new duplex.
It's the Franco.
well, all our interviews are here.
Right.
Okay, all right, right after P2, we'll go to interviews.
All right, I just
Request to install new pole number 3 for a new duplex at the end of the street.
so moved.
Has it been reviewed by DPW? Fire, any issues? No issues? Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go back to interviews. All over the place tonight.
Yeah, we're doing.
Okay, first we had the Economic Development Board. Is Mr. Mead here?
He is.
Please come forward. Okay, you were here
evening.
last month and we were gonna give you the opportunity to decide if you actually wanted to serve on the Economic Development Board because you weren't really sure, so.
I did have an opportunity to attend their meeting last week, and yeah, it was very exciting with some of their agendas and some of the things they'd like to get accomplished.
Okay.
And I'd like to be part of that, yes.
Motion to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye, thank you.
Welcome
Good
aboard.
luck.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, next we go to Town Sergeant Arthur Franco. Arthur, please come down. How we doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you bring a note for being tardy?
I did not.
Okay.
I apologize.
Just give us a quick rundown and what's your experience or what's your, we do have your resume. It's just a-
Sure. So basically, I've been in public service since my whole adult life, right out of high school. Graduated Bristol Heights in 1987. Enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I was in boot camp July 7th of 87. Honorably discharged 4 years later. Pursued a career in law enforcement. Started off as a reserve officer in Bristol. Then worked 8 years at the Donald Wyatt Detention Facility. Then transferred to the Rhode Island Sheriff's Division, where I retired as of last January. Moved from Bristol with my wife and children 3 years ago to Warren. We live on Country Road. And I have a little hobby farm, something I've always wanted to do. I take rescued animals and I have miniature horses, some poultry, something I enjoy very much doing. And I've also recently become a special constable detail officer for the town of Warren. So I also do that. And that's it.
Okay, any questions from the council? Motion?
I could have fun, but I'll let it.
I know you could, Mr. Kalenda. I know you could.
And I know your brother-in-law too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's one thing.
he
against
lives
me.
across the street from me.
So, okay.
That's even worse.
Motion to approve.
Thanks.
Second.
We have a
I
motion
appreciate
and a
that.
second. All in favor?
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you all for your service.
Yep.
You
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
No talking about the high-speed chase we got in.
Okay, next we are on to correspondence. Anybody want to pull anything?
I don't think, well, I'm not sure if anybody wants to pull anything, but I did review all of the annual reports from the various groups, the Parks and Rec and the WBHDC and zoning and arts and culture, and a lot of good stuff is going on. So thank you all for those.
Okay. There was one.
There was the resignation from Zachary Weinberger, which we should send him a letter of gratitude.
I agree. Motion and a second to send out a letter of gratitude.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There was one board that actually wanted to, did they? Sandy? There's no one from the Arts and Cultural Commission here?
Aaron is not here.
Okay. Okay, well.
Invite her for next.
We're here next month. Okay, next we are up to old business. Discussion and action regarding the bid for storage, bathrooms, concession and office facilities at Burrs Hill Park. Hi, Dara.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Same to you.
So we have, in December, we actually interviewed both companies with the bids that had bid on the project. We spoke with both, asking the same questions. You have in front of you the report that Kate put together with the scoring that we did after speaking to both of those organizations or companies in addition to their bid proposals and what they presented to us. And we are recommending that the higher bidder actually be awarded the contract. And one of the reasons is because that, as you can see in the scoring, more information was provided, and they provided all of the information with from start to finish. So from pre-construction all the way to turning on the lights. So the cost dollar for dollar, if you had looked at the whole project, would estimate it to be similar.
So the higher bid was more inclusive, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I noticed, I can't remember, is it the office that has the linoleum floor? So Brian? I couldn't name it. Was one of them I think has a linoleum floor?
Yeah, it's the new, like, vinyl, one, I think it's called.
I was wondering if we shouldn't use the I'm asking your professional opinion, the epoxy over the cement, that be longer lasting?
The office has a wood floor.
All right, but that's not a slab.
That's why we moved to make the bathroom section concrete.
So that's the one that's the one that's on the piles, right? The others are on the slab.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the difference. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Costs are covered.
Yes.
Thank you. Just making sure.
When's the shovel going in the ground?
As first, there does have to be some engineering, but as soon as you approve it, we will be moving forward. And hopefully, if Mother Nature cooperates, it will be ready for the summer program.
Good.
That's the goal.
That-
Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal as it's been presented to the council.
And award the bid to Blank Construction in the amount of $474,980.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, next we have new business, discussion and action regarding the extension of the contract with Fussin and O'Neill for on-call engineering services. Kate?
This is just a request to extend the existing contract with our on-call engineering consultant. We have two, as you recall, we have Fussin O'Neill and Beta. And they've agreed to hold their billing rates the same. So the recommendation is to issue the extension.
Any questions from the council? Can we have,
O'Neill's been good.
Yep.
So many.
we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have the solicitor. Number one, requesting a motion for executive session for update on Pereira v. Town of Warren. We're pretty much aware of what that is. Can we have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
And second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Councilwoman Cronin,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
Aye.
Councilman Di Pasquale.
Aye.
Vice President Kalenda.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, next we have request for executive session, potential litigation regarding personnel matters. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Councilwoman Cronin,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
Aye.
Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Vice President Kalenda,
Aye.
and I am aye as well. Number three, request for a motion for the executive session for litigation update of the GC Warren Gateway. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
And second.
Roll call, Councilwoman Cronin,
Aye.
Councilman Hecker,
Aye.
Councilman Di Pasquale,
Aye.
Vice President Kalenda,
Aye.
and I am aye as well. Okay, next we go to Finance Director. Hello, phone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have the reports. Do you have any questions?
No, we got the reports. Everything looks good. We're somewhat on target.
Keeping the lights on for another month.
For tonight, yes.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Tomorrow is another day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next we have Public Works Director. Repairs, discussion and action, repairs to the town hall roof.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Brian. How are
So
you?
this is
for the leak that's in that corner by the leaks on top of the trophy case sometimes. You heard it last month. So we had them come out. Renaissance Roofing is the same people that put in the ice dams on the roof. They work with this slate roofs all the time. So you see in there, it's approximately 30 feet that they'll be replacing. They can get to it this spring. They'll also be working on the library when they're doing it. So
Okay,
do
we have that budgeted? Okay, we do.
Maintenance fund, I'm sorry,
Okay.
we have in maintenance funds.
Okay, so we need the to approve the
So moved.
contract motion.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Okay, and next we have update on the status of the tree located alongside Town Hall, which recently just broke a window in that last windstorm.
Yeah, so we have a quote to remove it. I have talked to the tree warden as well today about it. There is potential to utilize it as a training tree with our employees and the tree warden, but there's also, depending on how fast we want it out of there, we can go straightforward with a quote. We have the money for that as well to just kind of remove it. On September 30th, the tree commission was notified by the tree warden that this tree was hazard and was going to be removed. So there was no complaints at the time from it. I think we all know that it's starting to grow into the soffits as well as we're now on our second, it's broken. So
And plan to replace it.
we can replace it, just not in that area. So I think our best bet is to find another location for a tree that would be not as hazardous.
And easier to maintain. It's surrounded by two buildings so close, you can't.
But we're off, I mean, if it's in front, if it's
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere in back, I mean, we'll find a new spot for a tree that's
Okay.
not gonna cause an
And the
issue in the future.
appropriate tree.
And the appropriate tree.
And that's as much of it is.
Yep, and I'll work with the tree commission on identifying what
Okay,
would
so
be
that
best
was-
for the area.
That was just an update. I don't believe we need to take a vote on it, but let's just, we know the process that you gotta post a tree and blah, 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 right? Correct?
No, not if it's.
Not a
hazardous
hazardous tree.
tree.
Okay, all right, let's just make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's
Yep.
and
I think we should plant one where it's shade, some asphalt, right in the middle of the parking lot. It's horrible out there. Summertime.
thank you.
okay, that's done. We are gonna take a 5-minute break. When we come
Motion to
back,
adjourn to,
we're gonna go into executive
Executive
session.
session.
Motion to go into executive session. No, I just said update, so I don't think we have to vote on it.
I mean, we did.
Yep.
Are we gonna set up here for executive?
we'll stay.
Yeah, we'll stay here. Yep. 5 minutes. No. No, 10 minutes ago, you get me out of here by now. That's it.
The guy who's, I think, give her.
Okay, so we're good to go. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. You have to reference or anything? No. Okay, yeah.
No action needed on
Yeah. Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Did the minutes?
Yeah.
Yes.
I still have all day.
Did you put in the ad at all that there's a or I should say, is there a possibility for any remote work? That would,
I don't have any mention of that in an ad here. We haven't done.